Hey everyone, we're at the University of Calgary for the second biennial meeting of the Pan-American Society for Evolutionary Developmental Biology. I'm Molly, I'm a graduate student in Elena Kramer's lab at Harvard University and the creator and host of Science in Real Life on YouTube. And I'm here with Nadia Frobisch.
Hi, I'm Nadia Frobisch. I'm a scientist at the Museum für Naturkunde and the Humboldt University in Berlin.
As a teacher, what topics have your students been most interested in and why?
It was exactly the breadth of fields that Evo-Devo classically covers, right? You can address questions that are primarily developmental with a little bit of evolutionary in it, or they can be very paleontological and then you're drawn into how the structure actually develops in living organisms. So the combination of these different fields and factors is what interests them most.
Oh, that's a hard one because each student has their own particular sort of background and interest. Maybe they're more interested in plant biology or animal biology. Maybe they're more interested in morphology or genes. So I guess I would maybe rephrase your question, and I'll just let you know, or I'll just answer it by telling you that the thing that gets all the students in my class most excited is by having hands-on experiences. So working with the flowers, dissecting flowers, really experiencing that diversity, or working with organisms, dissecting cnidarians and watching them regenerate and seeing that they can actually carry out an experiment and have the excitement of the results, that sort of satisfaction. That gets them really engaged.
So for my students, a lot of my teaching is around phylogenetics and understanding evolutionary history and how do we infer things about the past. And one thing that I always want my students to take away from their classes is what is the best evidence for evolution? So when somebody says to you, how do we know evolution happened? I want my students to walk away and be able to say, this is why, this is why, this is why. And a lot of my evidence that I bring up is very dry and systematic, like, oh, the hierarchical nesting of trait variation. Blah, blah, blah. They get most excited about things like deep homology, the fact that these things that have such different forms share these incredible similarities at the genomic level that are really only explainable by common ancestry. And so, things like the Hox genes, those examples always get people excited.
So I actually teach veterinary anatomy.
Oh, very cool.
And it's a perfect comparative paradigm to teach people about Evo-Devo, because I have in front of me horses and dogs and cats and cows, and they all have these different skeletal proportions and sizes and shapes. And so it's a good opportunity to tell them how and why these things evolve.
So I've taught plant morphology to groups of large groups of students, and also evolution. And I'd say in both cases, I feel like my students are most interested in understanding organismal interactions. So you can take a plant, but you make it really exciting when you then start talking about the pollinator. And then maybe the pollinator has a parasite. And then maybe that parasite does something to the plant. And then, of course, there's always some fungus that comes in and destroys the pollinator, the plant, and the parasite, right? And so it's a lot about those organismal interactions and the actual the shapes and the forms and the genes that even underlie and generate these organismal interactions.
So I actually teach a class in evolutionary developmental biology, cool. And it's an absolute blast, and the students really like it. I think, ironically, the topic that I don't actually research myself is often their favorite. They're really interested in environmental impacts on aspects of development. It's not something that I personally work on in my lab, but it's something that they find really fascinating.
One of the classes that I teach, I'm at the University of California, San Diego now, and one of the classes that I teach is actually an introductory course on evolutionary ecology, and it's a course both for majors and for non-majors, so I get the whole gamut of people who want to be there and who don't want to be there. And one thing I'm sensitive to is the fact that about 10 or 15% of my class are creationists who have not incorporated ideas of evolutionary biology into their life. And I was the same. So I actually grew up creationist in Texas, and I started working in a research lab when I was an undergraduate at Cornell, and that's really what made the transformation for me. And because of that, I'm sensitive with my class. I think it's really interesting that the first thing I do in class is I walk in and I say, no matter where you are in the spectrum of understanding and acceptance, it's okay, and you don't have to change your mind today, you don't have to change your mind by the end of the quarter, but it's a process. And then I teach 2 lectures on the history of evolutionary thought to show them that it's been a process through history. So
that's incredible.
That's something I take a lot of joy in being able to do.
Absolutely.
I teach an Evo-Devo course, and one of the things I tell them is that at the end of this course, going into it, you will be able, sort of projecting myself onto them and saying, at the end of this class, you will know, you'll be able to look at a turtle, you'll be able to look at a bat, you'll be able to look at a whale or a snake and say, I know how that happened.
Right.
And the world will be that much richer for it. Now, of course, now they've become increasingly interested in CRISPR, and can we go back in time? Can we resurrect dinosaurs? Can we resurrect a woolly mammoth? And so there's been a shift, and it's been driven by technology, and that's kind of cool to see too.
Students get very fascinated when it's something that they can relate to. It's either something that has something to do with humans, or they actually get pretty fascinated when you tell them about actually changing climates and how plants and animals respond to that, and what the options are, and where we're seeing changes. So I think sort of with evolution and development, we see a lot of things where we can track those changes by looking at the diversity of animals. And in some ways, I'm going to try to incorporate that into what I'm teaching. I'm now going to teach genetics. So I have a new mission, and we're actually trying to draw in things where we're doing comparative biology. Talking about how different organisms can solve the same problem of how do you withstand cold, something like that.
So I co-teach a course on computer modeling and ecology evolution with Lin Chao, and we basically take students who have really never even thought about programming before, and by the end they're making complex models of ecological and evolutionary systems. And so I think students really like that, and I think it's also really crucially important that they know, look, we can actually do something on the computer. We can simulate real life. We can use it to answer real questions in biology. I think they like that a lot.
Very cool. So the way I teach evolution and development, and I teach to class of 60, is I have lectures Monday, Wednesday, and then they research papers on Friday, and we do that for a couple weeks, and then they start to read their own papers, and it really helps me see what's going on in the field. I find that they're interested in lots of different things: teeth, dinosaurs, dinosaur hair. I'm interested in evolution of chordates. Sometimes people get interested in that. I again allow them to look at lots of different things, and many of the students are pre-meds, and so many of the things like, there's a heart gene that's involved in causing heart problems, and so a lot of them are interested in those kind of things too. Tin Man and some of these things that are developmental genes that are really important, and that when they're mutated can cause human problems as well.